What's good, y'all? It is Friday, December 12th. My name is Patrick, and this is the morning show. We did it, y'all. My son is asleep while I'm recording this, and I can't be as loud as I want to be, but we did it, y'all. Yesterday, around like 4:45, 5 o'clock, something like that, the Indiana State Senate voted on redistricting, and the Indiana State Senate voted no. The nays took it 31-19. I don't know if that's considered a landslide victory in the Senate in a 50-person chamber, but it feels pretty good. I'm not gonna lie. Feels like a landslide. This morning I just want to talk a little bit about kind of my initial reactions to the votes coming in. A little bit about what it was like watching some of the testimony that was given yesterday, and a little bit of like what I'm taking away from this going forward. Oh, I also want to get into a little bit of the internet reaction, because we were all celebrating together online. So without further ado, when the votes came in, I was actually on my way to pick up Van from daycare, and I don't know why. I mean, I'd been watching the testimony. I'm not gonna lie, I was a little nervous. I guess not hearing 45 people say that they were gonna vote no for sure, and here are the factually based reasons why, and here what all of my constituents are saying, and this is why. Not hearing an overwhelming amount of no's in the testimonies that I was listening to from the Senate floor today, online. Shout out to the Indy Star for streaming. I just wasn't sure. I'm not gonna lie, I was not sure. And when I got the text from one of my friends, Elise Schrock, who was on site today, it felt like two things. Honestly, here's what it felt like. It felt like an immediate rush of elation followed by an extreme release of breath, an exhale that I feel like I've been holding in since all of this started. Not necessarily since August, but at least since October. It felt like an exhale, and it felt like a collective exhale from all of us here in Indiana. And it reminded me a lot of what it felt like to be in New York City when the mayoral race was called this past November, and I guess last month. That feels like a lifetime ago already, but it felt like a cry of celebration followed by a deep sigh of relief. That relief caveated with the understanding that this is a reprieve, not necessarily a war-ending victory. I don't know why I'm using that kind of analogy, but that's what I'm using. The game ain't over, but in this moment, we got to win. I saw somebody on Threads post that this was not a win for any of the senators, any of the elected leaders who voted no. This is not necessarily a win for anybody other than us, the constituents of Indiana, Hoosiers, everyday Hoosiers who live in the state, who we're seeing across the board a mad scramble to disenfranchise, dilute, and downplay our voices in not just 2026, but for however long we might be dealing with this. And again, this is not over. But I think what we saw were people tired of being told this is the way and this is the only way, and deciding that no, I think we're going to let people know how we really feel about this. And that was really encouraging. I'll get into a little bit more of kind of the takeaway, what's next, what I'm thinking about next in a second. But I want to talk a little bit about what I saw from the testimony. I wanted to shout out, again, my favorite state senator, Andrea Humley, who represents me here in District 46. I also wanted to shout out Senator Yoder, who is the minority leader in the House, or in the Senate. And I felt like they both did not give long testimony, but what I really appreciated was just this. It felt like culmination of the work and everything that they have been doing up until this point. And so they have continued to be incredible leaders. And so I just wanted to shout them out really quickly because I appreciate them. I also wanted to shout out Senator Greg Good. I don't have his district pulled up here, but he, I believe, represents the area that encompasses Terre Haute, the district that encompasses Terre Haute. I saw that he was the last remaining on the fence senator. And I actually tuned into the testimony when he was up speaking. And I really appreciated the way that he approached this conversation. The things that stood out to me were immediately him talking about how he had listened to his constituents and that his decision to vote no was based on what they were saying. The other thing that stood out to me, which is directly connected to that, was that he was the only Republican legislator, or at least Republican senator, who held a town hall in his district to hear from his constituents about this issue. I think that says a lot. I think that says a lot. Not only about Senator Good and what his and how he operates, but about the rest of the Republican Party here in Indiana and how they operate. I think that says a lot. Especially thinking about how this is a victory for people. That is a perfect example of how of that. That is a perfect example of that. The constituents of Greg Good's district let him know that this was not the way that we do things. And that at the end of the day, this can have maybe a more significant impact in ways that they are not expecting. So shout out to Greg Good. Shout out to Senator Good. Appreciate your no vote. And hopefully the words that you shared on the floor today swayed some folks in that direction. Two people I want to shout down, I think, are Senator Brown and Senator Garton. I don't have their first names here, but those are two folks whose testimonies I heard who were extremely pro redistricting. That really, like, I don't know, those two and one other person, I was thinking to myself as they were speaking, I felt really embarrassed that they were people elected to sit in the state house and represent Hoosiers. Senator Brown, she was all over the place. Two things really stood out to me about her testimony. One was how unconnected it was throughout, very rambling, but also like had nothing to do with Indiana. I think she mentioned Indiana like twice. But for the most part, it felt like she was doing a campaign speech. Essentially, she was hitting like all kinds of highlights, from budgeting, like Democrat budgeting issues, to she ended her testimony about abortion and pro-life bills. Nothing to do with redistricting, the issue that we're here to debate, and talk about and vote on. Nothing to do, nothing about Hoosiers at all. Nothing about her constituents at all. Another thing about her testimony too was, this was the only one that I heard two people vocally speak out from the gallery up top, and I could not hear clearly what was said. But they were met with a lot of consternation from Lieutenant Governor Micah Beckwith, who presides over the Senate when they have sessions like this. And he said something when he kicked out one of the first hecklers that really took me back. And I'm saying that, and I'm bringing this up in relation to Senator Brown, because she was talking about something, again, that had nothing to do with redistricting. And Micah Beckwith said, "You sound pretty crazy. Why don't you get out?" He yelled that out at one of the constituents before they were removed. What? It's oh, this is a Christian pastor, who's saying this. Yeah, Micah Beckwith. That's a whole nother episode. Okay, so that was Senator Brown, and I thought that couldn't be like it couldn't possibly get any worse. But then Senator Garton came up, and I'm not gonna lie, my impression of Senator Garton, who I was unaware of prior to this, is like, I don't know if I want to say Pete Hegseth light, maybe Pete Hegseth extreme. I don't know. Not great. Not great. He again didn't really speak a lot about Indiana. Didn't speak at all about his constituents. And at one point got so mad, was so animated, that he slammed his hand on the podium or whatever and said, "Of course it's political. Political policy is political." And I'm not going to lie, I laughed. I literally laughed, because nobody's saying that political policy isn't political. The issue is when you're doing things to disenfranchise people and taking away their ability to be appropriately represented, or taking away their ability to be appropriately represented in Congress, in the state house. Ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. But all I can think about when those two people were speaking was just like, I am embarrassed that these two somehow tricked people into voting for them. Wild stuff. And the rhetoric that they are employing, that they've been employing since August, since this whole redistricting thing started in Texas, even before August, was so, I don't know. It wasn't effective. And like the hardline stances that they took, and how they've been talking about redistricting, why they think redistricting is important, why they think that they should be able to do this mid-decade. In all of their rhetoric and all of the things that they talked about in all of these many months, I don't know that I heard maybe a handful of times why this was important for Hoosiers. Why is this important for Hoosiers? That is a question they could not answer. Do you know why they couldn't answer the question? Because it's not important for us. It's not about us. It's not about the constituents in their districts who elected them to lead us. It has nothing to do with that. Because if it did, they would not support redistricting at this point in the first place. Because if you look at the districts, their districts are getting diluted. Their districts are getting split up. One of the reasons that Senator Good cited was that His constituents didn't want to be in a district with people from Indianapolis. They didn't want to be broken up into a district with people whose interests completely are different than them. And when something like that happens, you start to run candidates in those areas that end up not representing either group of people. And at the end of the day, all of us lose when it comes to who's representing us in the state house in DC. And that happens with rhetoric like the rhetoric employed by the Republican Party over the last however long. And especially for Indiana Republicans around this issue of redistricting, like, y'all shot yourselves in the foot. If you wanted this to get through, you would have talked about how this impacted your constituents. And this is what I'm saying. If you would have talked to them, you would know that they don't want this. They don't want this. We don't want this. So that's my big takeaway from the testimony. Like, and kind of from this whole thing overall, is that we did this. The constituents did this by raising our voices, by showing up to the state house, by calling, by emailing, by writing letters. We made this happen. All right, we're going to go to the internet real quick. I want to read just a couple of the things that some people have shared on Threads. So if you want to follow me on Threads at Patrick in the World, come check me out on there. I'll be yapping about all things Indiana, Indianapolis, and identity. Let's see. Our state senators finally stood up for democracy. So freaking proud to be in Senator Greg Walker's district. I heard he was challenging Senator Gaskill openly on the floor today, which is awesome. Let's see. This person said, I've always really loved my state, even when it's been hard to love. It's home, and it's been really hard to love a lot lately. Today, my chest unclenched just a tiny bit, and what a welcome relief for a moment. That's what I'm talking about, being able to breathe. This person, Terry 8000, said, I worked in the state of Indiana for 35 years, meeting people every day. I found Hoosiers to be truthful and respectful people. Not once did I have a conversation about political affiliation with anyone. It didn't matter. We all wanted the same thing. Our senators reminded us of that today. Hoosiers don't like to cheat, and we don't like to be told what to do. Shout out to Senator Hundley. At Indiana wants me. Our family has been sure that we need to move to another state. This gives me the first bit of hope that maybe we can stay here. I hope you can stay here too. Sunshine Trisha said, it's interesting that Vigo County is a bellwether county and almost always votes in line with the rest of the country in the presidential elections. Now we have Senator Good in Vigo County saying his constituents were overwhelmingly against the redistricting. Is this a shift in Vigo that signifies a shift nationwide? That's a great question, Trisha. I'm not one to say. If you look at our voter demographics or our voter registration demographics, we have like 45% independents. And then we got some Republicans, we got some Democrats. Is it a shift? I don't know. I would like to think so. You see what's happening in Georgia. You see what's happening in Tennessee. Afton Bain, specifically, like in Tennessee 7, shifting it by almost double-digit points. Like, that's a shift for sure. What's happened in New York City with Zoran? Shift for sure. So I would say that it very well could be a precursor and indicative of what's happening. I was concerned when it came down to it. They'd vote for redistricting. They'd all been saying no, but I was afraid they'd cave at the last minute, but they didn't. Mary Brannigan says, shocked and feeling like this is a turning point. Who knew Indiana would turn the ship? I agree. All right, Desert Crafty said, 1, I feel angry about how much time and energy was wasted. Agreed. Number 2, this could have backfired if they voted yes. Hoosiers don't like being told what to do, especially after seeing how ridiculous those maps were. Agreed. 3, people power. Agreed. And number 4, we have some pretty great Democratic state senators and reps. I also agree. Let's see. There was one more I wanted to read that kind of bridge us into. Okay, here. This is the one I want to read. Shelly OGJC said, the vote doesn't change the fact that our state is made up of a large number of really racist and bigoted people. I mean, New Palestine is still the Dragons. Several of the senators showed their fascist ways in the arguments today. Midwesterners are hardy people. Perhaps the death threats caused some of the senators to say enough on this one point. They remained unexcused for everything else they voted for to try to stay in the 1950s. I couldn't agree more. I think that it is really easy to look at this win and say, okay, as we've been talking about, as some of the people have even been talking about, like shifting, a shift in Indiana. It's be easy to rest on our laurels and say, oh, thank God this happened. It's a win. Thanking the Republican senators who voted no. Like, it can't be rose-colored glasses, essentially. And if we look at this through that lens, then we are going to excuse all of the other bad shit that's been going on, and that people either vote for or believe in or think that we should be doing. Like, and we have to continue to hold our elected leaders accountable. Which kind of brings me to what I think is next. Where do we go from here? Shout out to everybody that follows me on Threads, by the way. Shout out to everybody that's happening to the podcast. Really appreciate y'all. We're here daily. You know what it is. So next year is a big year. 2026 is a big year. If you are paying attention to other states, people are already like, this is the time when you have to file to run in your midterms. I think January something is the deadline. I don't know if it's session or not, but I know early January is the filing deadline. So if you want to run, you got to get it in now. And you are seeing, or at least I've been seeing, this happening a lot in different places. Texas is one that I have been keeping an eye on. But that's happening here too in Indiana. We have midterms coming up. And if there's, of the many takeaways that I have, the many affirmations I think that I can feel coming out of this win today is that if this is the time, if we are in the midst of a shift, then that means we have to not only remain engaged in all aspects and areas of Indiana, but we have to start identifying, and supporting Democratic candidates in those areas, in those districts, that can put up a proper challenge to the incumbent Republicans that have always been there. And I think people are looking for leaders that are accountable, leaders that show up, leaders that listen. That's what we're looking for right now. And it doesn't really matter if you have a D or if you have an R or if you have an I in front of or behind your name. Like, at the end of the day, constituents, people, families here in this state want leaders who listen and who are going to listen and who are going to take into account the voices of not just them as individuals, but them as a collective in that district, and who know that when that person goes to the state house or that person goes to Congress, goes to D.C., and is working on legislation, is fighting against legislation, is having conversations, that they are going to be doing that with the best interests of their entire constituency at heart. That's why we want to elect people. And the only way we can do that is when we stay engaged. We stay engaged and we run people who are actually going to listen and do the things that we need them to do. Two numbers that I'll leave you with that Senator Hundley dropped in episode 5. 101,000 registered voters in Marion County did not vote in the 2024 election. 300,000 voters, registered voters in Indiana, in the state, did not vote in the 2024 presidential election. As Senator Hundley said, If we show up, we can shift elections. But we have to show up. Not only that, and here's the thing, we've been showing up. This whole situation today proves that we've been showing up. Now we need our party to lead us in identifying these candidates and helping them run races that are competitive and that can give us the opportunity to ride that momentum and make that change and that shift to actually happen. So that's what I think is next. For now, sigh of relief. Right now, enjoy the holidays. Whatever holiday you celebrate and observe, enjoy those. Be with your family, be with your friend, be with community. Be on the lookout because it is cold out there. And we got cold things happening out there still. And it requires community to step in and provide the warmth that community needs in these cold, cold times. So do that. Keep breathing. Keep drinking water. Stay hydrated. And yeah, take this win. Savor this win because the fight's not over. We'd love to hear more of your thoughts. What are your thoughts coming out of this, out of Thursday? What are your thoughts going into the weekend? Hop on the Substack, hop in the chat, drop a note, send me an email, send me a DM on Instagram or Threads at Patrick in the World. We're going to be back on Monday with episode 7. That is with my good friend Stretch Thalley. We have an awesome conversation about a whole bunch of things, lots of laughs, but also like, what does it mean to be a good friend? Like, it's a really good conversation. So tune in for that. And then we got the morning show Tuesday through Friday. More conversations just like this. I'm sure there will be things that we need to talk about. But until then, I hope your weekend is everything that you need it to be. I've been Patrick Armstrong. This is From the Kitchen Table. See y'all soon.